Kelly's morale today?
He likes to say he was terribly good. He's in the fight for his life. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, so that recording you guys just seen was from Nicole Becker. So keep everything she just said in mind as I read to you guys this new emergency motion for bond. Child, so emergency. Woohoo! Emergency motion for temporary release and or accommodations for preparation of his defense for trial, now scheduled to begin on August 9, 2021. Okay. All right, y'all. So we got Thomas Farinella from New York. He's putting through this motion for temporary release. Emergency motion for temporary release. Now, this is 12 pages long. All right, we can go ahead, go right through it. Let me just go through this real quick with y'all and see what we can find. First, it's saying Mr. Kelly made 3 prior applications for bond and appealed the district court's denial for temporary release. Despite the Second Circuit's denial of Mr. Kelly's appeal, the court stated in their decision that we assume that adequate opportunity for consultation with counsel will be assured as a matter of trial administration by the judges who will preside over the 2 trials. This application is being filed to ensure that the Second Circuit's assumption hold true, as well as to ensure Mr. Kelly's constitutional right to counsel and constitutional right to a fair trial are adhered to in this case. So since his arrival, June 22nd, 2021, the Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, Mr. Kelly has not been permitted to meet and confer with counsel in person and will not be able to do so until July 6, 2021, and after he tests negative for COVID-19. It is undisputed that he is illiterate, which makes in-person meetings essential, so he can prepare for August 9, 2021 jury trial. Since December 2020, while at MCC, Mr. Kelly was granted the opportunity to attend FaceTime calls with his attorneys. The calls were scheduled on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 1:30 to 3:30 Central Standard Time. The FaceTime calls permitted a line of communication, but ultimately proved to not be very effective. The calls were constantly interrupted. A camera was placed both in front of Mr. Kelly and behind him, and Mr. Kelly's illiteracy created an impossible situation. A request was made to the MDC for accommodation of Mr. Kelly's disability to no availability. This court granted Mr. Kelly's request to view the discovery material in prison. On August 8, 2019, a stipulation and protective order was entered regarding the discovery materials. In order for Mr. Kelly to be able to assist his counsel, the court allowed for 1 single copy to be given to Mr. Kelly, along with a number of CDs. As of the date of this motion, after several requests by Mr. Kelly, the lead attorney at the time has not produced anything from Mr. Kelly's review. Although Mr. Kelly has literacy issues, he indicated that he would rather struggle through it than not have it at all. Damn, that's fucked up, yo. Alright. Given the current circumstances that exist, Mr. Kelly, in the Special Housing Unit SHU, the lack of meaningful communications with Mr. Kelly while he is in prison, and Mr. Kelly's inability to assist in his defense, the only assurance that Mr. Kelly will be prepared for his trial in August if he is granted immediate pretrial release. Excuse me. The lack of ability to communicate with Mr. Kelly. Phone calls between inmates and their lawyers are an essential part of preparing an inmate for trial. Due to the fact that Mr. Kelly is in the SHU, access to him via phone has remained difficult and impractical when it comes to discussing certain legal strategies in order to properly prepare for trial. There is little preparation that can be done when Mr. Kelly calls counsel from a shower and has to talk through a slit in the door. These barbaric conditions fundamentally prevent Mr. Kelly from being able to assist his counsel in his own defense. Meanwhile, every time Mr. Kelly speaks, everything he says is heard throughout the SHU due to the acoustics and echo heard reverberating throughout the SHU prison walls. Again, not an appropriate environment to strategize with Mr. Kelly for his trial. What the fuck? Oh, come on, man. Immediately upon learning of Mr. Kelly's transfer, counsel reached out to MDC and scheduled a call on June 23, 2021. Mr. Kelly placed a legal call at 7:30 a.m. The conversation, it says the court has appointed Curcio counsel. The court wants Curcio counsel to meet with Mr. Kelly face-to-face, and that will take place on or before July 12, 2021. Additionally, it appears that there are scheduling issues with the other counsel. You know what? This shit is so fucked up, and they trying to make it harder and harder. Alright. But then it says the conference... I'm sorry. So I read that part where it has the number 1, and I shouldn't have read it, but I did read it. Anyways, so let me go back. It says immediately upon learning of Mr. Kelly's transfer, counsel reached out to the MDC and scheduled a call. On June 23, 2021, Mr. Kelly placed a legal call at 7:30 a.m. The conversation was brief, and there was no legal substance discussed regarding Mr. Kelly's case due to the detention conditions that exist. At present, Mr. Kelly is forced to make phone calls from a shower in a desperate effort to obtain privacy, which is unacceptable. Clearly, a shower is not an appropriate place to have a meaningful conversation with one's lawyer. A few additional legal calls were placed, but unfortunately they were met with the same difficulties. Mr. Kelly continues to inform counsel of the challenging conditions he is currently placed in, which unequivocally thwart his ability to properly assist his counsel in his own defense. Frankly, to believe that Mr. Kelly is able to assist in his own defense under these circumstances is beyond preposterous. In an effort to continue to prepare for trial, counsel requested FaceTime or a Zoom call be made available. Counsel was told that FaceTime and Zoom calls are not available for Mr. Kelly. Although FaceTime and Zoom calls don't necessarily remove the issues counsel is having in communicating with their client, it is better than nothing. So even this court seemed to acknowledge the difficulty of using video conference to communicate with Mr. Kelly versus being in person at the Curcio hearing, the June 17th hearing. When addressing the fact that Mr. Kelly was present via video instead of in person, this court stated, but recognizing that I think it's very difficult for Mr. Kelly to have communications by video. This court went on to say, when referring to the importance of an independent attorney meeting face-to-face with Mr. Kelly, if he so choose, I think it's an important enough subject that I want to make sure that Mr. Kelly has absolute clarity on what the issues are and what the potential conflicts may be. This supports the defense's argument that it is close to impossible to legitimately prepare for a trial only having access to their client via phone and or video, especially when the client has literacy issues. You know what? This shit is so fucked up. This is so fucked up. Let's see. Up here, number 3, request for Mr. Kelly's temporary release, Section A, right to access counsel and assist in Mr. Kelly's defense. Let's see that. This court has the authority to grant Mr. Kelly temporary relief pursuant a law that the court may permit the detainee's temporary release to the extent that the judicial officer determines such release to be necessary. Underscores the discretionary nature of relief under this subsection. The statute goes on to say the judicial officer may be subsequent order permit the temporary release of the person in the custody of the United States Marshal or another appropriate person to the extent that the judicial officer determines such release to be necessary for preparation of the person's defense or for another compelling reason. You know, so, alright. This right here, that fuck shit, with the whole Bill Cosby case as well. You know, it's up to the judge and the DAs and all them prosecution to like grant this to this man. It looks like here they have a law, okay? A what do you call it? It's a okay, a law, right? That says that he should have temporary relief. Temporary release. Okay? Now, just because it says that, and there's a law out there that says that, does not mean that the judicial system or the judges, the DAs, the prosecution, are going to follow the laws and the rules and do what is constitutional for the defendant. Like with Bill Cosby. This judge had literally threw Bill Cosby in jail, and Bill Cosby wasn't even supposed to go to jail. How about that? You know, after everything is said and done, you go over to Bill Cosby's Instagram page and you'll learn a fucking lot on his case. You'll learn he was fucked royally. He's got a civil case. They told him to do a civil disposition in reference to when they had closed his documents. They sealed his documents. Anyways, so R. Kelly, same thing here. Like, if they don't go through and give this man the time he needs with his counsel, like, come on, man, that's fucked up. There's laws. They got a couple laws here that, I'm not reading all of it, but there's a lot of laws they have in here. They always provide laws. The question is, does the judge follow the laws? Does the DA follow the laws? Prosecution follow laws? Fuck no. If they want to get in their emotions and feelings and want to do whatever the fuck they want to do, that's what they do. It's sad, yo. It's real sad. Like, our judicial system sucks. We definitely need justice reform. If you noticed on my latest videos with Bill Cosby, I hashtag justice reform. It needs to happen. It needs to fucking happen. So, let me read this last section here. Sometimes in the last section, they really get into some things. Alright. So, they go on to talk about Mr. Kelly's mental state plays a large role in his ability to assist his counsel in his defense. During other bond hearings, several of the CDC guidelines were cited as reasoning for why Mr. Kelly did not deserve a bond, nor to be released under any circumstances. Since the previous bond motions, the CDC has broadened their guidelines when it comes to who is the most vulnerable with contracting COVID-19. In June 2021, the CDC indicated that adults of any age with certain medical conditions can be more likely to get severely ill from COVID-19. This eliminates the prior representations by the CDC that the group of people who previously were categorized as most at risk for contracting COVID-19 and getting severely ill from it were older adults, approximately 65 years old and up. Now, under the current CDC guidelines, Mr. Kelly, at the age of 54, with certain medical conditions contracted since he has been in prison, would be more likely to get severely ill from COVID-19 than perhaps a man of similar age and stature without the same medical conditions that Mr. Kelly continues to suffer from. The CDC broadened. Okay, so they go into the CDC thing. Let me read this last paragraph. It says, even if there is a question about whether Mr. Kelly's diagnosis would lead him to be high risk or not, the trial courts have generally not required that a detainee actually be classified as high risk as a prerequisite to granting release from detention under law sections. The question is whether release is necessary for the preparation of the person's defense or for another compelling reason. Accordingly, this court does not even need to reach the issue of how the COVID-19 pandemic has personally affected Mr. Kelly's health in order to determine that release from custody is appropriate. Notably, while incarcerated at the MCC, Mr. Kelly begged counsel for an outside evaluation for both his mental and physical state from his days in the SHU. And since he contracted two very serious diseases on January 2021, both Mr. Leonard and Mr. Greenberg promised Mr. Kelly that they would have those services provided for him, with the understanding at the time that they would have to be via FaceTime. Mr. Leonard specifically took on the role of committing to making those visits happen for Mr. Kelly. After several reminders to Mr. Leonard by both Mr. Kelly and co-counsel, Unfortunately, for Mr. Kelly's well-being, neither Mr. Leonard nor the lead attorney, Mr. Greenberg, followed through with the client's important request, which left Mr. Kelly in the dark about both his mental and physical state. The extraordinary burdens imposed by the coronavirus pandemic restrictions, in conjunction with Mr. Kelly's right to assist in preparing for his own defense, certainly constitute compelling reasons that would permit this court to order the temporary release of Mr. Kelly pursuant to, and they put a law in there, the obstacles the current public health crisis poses to preparation of the defendant's defense constitute a compelling reason alone under section such and such. The circumstances as they exist now will continue to exist into the foreseeable future. This climate of the case as it stands now makes it impossible for not only Mr. Kelly to assist in his defense, but for the attorneys to appropriately prepare for his very quickly approaching jury trial. Mr. Kelly has received no assistance given the fact that he is illiterate and has difficulty reading and writing. Conclusion. For the foregoing reasons, Mr. Kelly respectfully submits that he should be released to prepare his defense for the impending trial now scheduled to begin on August 9, 2021. Respectfully submitted, Thomas A. Fernella, Nicole Blank Becker, and counsel for Robert S. Kelly. So how about that shit? Steve Greenberg and Mr. Leonard didn't fall through with promises they were making R. Kelly. That's what the fuck was going on, y'all. That's what the fuck was going on. Ooh. Ooh. Wow. Alright, guys. Leave it in the comments. Let me know how you feel about this. This is crazy to me. Wow. Well, you know, hey, hopefully this goes through and the man could come. He don't gotta come home. You know what I mean? They could put him in a fucking hotel room or some shit like that. He just needs to get to sit down with his legal counsel so he could talk about things. He needs to be seen by a doctor. What the fuck? He begged counsel for an outside evaluation for both his mental and physical state. Ain't that some shit? So that's why Nicole Becker had said this. I'm going to play the clip. Okay, guys, leave it in the comments. Share the video, like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed to the channel. Thanks for watching. Till next video. I just want to let you know where I got this video clip from to give him credit for. So let me get ready and play this for you guys.
R. Kelly's morale today.
He likes to say he was terribly good.
Okay.
In other words, he's doing terrible.
Yeah.
He's there, and everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Not good to be alive. He appreciates every single letter he gets. He actually reads every single letter.
Okay.
And photo. He really appreciates his fans. He always ends it by saying that to me.
Okay.
But